Hey guys, it's Sam for Digital Meat again, and in this Realflow tutorial for Cinema 4D, we're going to be looking at the Vortex Daemon. So let's get straight into it. Let's get rid of my ugly mug. Okay, so on the screen you can see that we've got basically a box with a little bit of a background. This is actually something that I nicked from a previous tutorial. What tutorial was that now? I think it was the collision tag. So it's the same kind of setup that I've got there, but instead of having some steps, which is what I was colliding with, I've just made a box instead. Anyway, so this is actually in Realflow for Cinema 4D 2.0. Now previously I was using Realflow for Cinema 4D 1. But I've got my hands on 2.0. So I just want to say hi to Alex from Next Limit and the Next Limit team. Give them a quick shout out. So yeah, I'm using 2.0. Now there are new features in this and I will be going over those in other tutorials. But in this one, I'm just going to be going over the Vortex. It's pretty much, in fact, it is the same as it was in 1.0. So this will still apply to 1.0 users. The only thing that's going to be different in this scene is the collision tag, which I'm going to go over quickly now. So this is my container here. Let's turn on my line so you can see what I'm selecting here. So yeah, this is my container, and you can see that we've got two tags on here now. So if I right click on the container and go to Realflow tags, you can see now we've got collider and volume, and that's what these are. So if I click on this is my collision tag, and you know, we've got the friction settings, the bounce, the stickiness, the roughness. It might be laid out a little bit different, but this is exactly what you'd expect to find in the collision tag. And just like the old collision tag, we've got the wet map, we've got the display, and the basic. So what's this other tag? This is volume. So if we have a look at the volume tag, we can see the cell size, the surface offset, and domain offset, all this kind of stuff. And you'll be thinking, wait a minute, I've seen that before. And that's because the things that are in these two tags, in 1.0, they were just in the collision tag. They were in the same tag, and it was called the collision tag. And now they've been separated out, so you have a collision tag and you have a volume tag. And this is what controls the cell size of your collision and all that kind of thing. So it's the same thing, they've just been split out. Okay, so now that's that, we got that dealt with. Let's dive into what we really want to talk about, and that's the Vortex Daemon. So as usual, I'm going to go to Realflow, I'm going to go to the emitters, and this time I'm going to choose a fill emitter. So there we go, we've got our scene tree there. So this emitter, it's going to be asking for a body to fill. I've gone over the emitters in a previous tutorial, so again, go back if you're not familiar with the emitters. Right, so yeah, we want to fill emitter. So what do we want to fill? Well, we don't actually want to fill this object here. We want to create a new object. So I'm going to create a cube, and I'm going to drag it down here underneath the container. I'm just going to call this fill object, just so we can differentiate between things. And I'm going to select our container and fill object, and I'm going to solo these, so we've just got those in the scene. I'm also going to come out of the camera as well. Okay, so let's solo both these objects, go into a side view, something like this, and I'm going to grab my fill object and just bring it up like this. I'm going to size it out. And this is what the body of water is gonna be in. So scoot that across there, something like this. We'll bring it up to the edge. Not too close. We'll bring it in a little bit. Okay, so that's one direction done. And then we go to the other direction, and we'll bring it out this way. We can probably shrink it down a little bit as well, just to make sure that it all goes in. Okay, so we've got our fill object now. So that's great. We can come out of our solo mode. So we're back in our scene. And this is the object we're going to use. We can hide this fill object now from the viewport and the renderer. Not that we're going to be rendering. Okay, so we got our fill object. So we can go back to our emitter now and drag our fill object into this. And as you can see, it populates it with a load of particles. Now I'm going to save here, and I'm going to save quite frequently. So if I do get any unexpected crashes, you know, it doesn't affect us too much. I can just make a break in the video and come back to you. Okay, so we've got our fill object in here now. Let's do something I should have done at the beginning of the tutorial, actually. Let's go to Scene, Display. No, actually, it's the Fluid Display. And we've got our particle size. I'm going to make them 4, just so they're bigger, so you guys can see them. And okay, cool. So that should be good for that. Also, I want to use my GPU. Now, this might be the thing that causes maybe some crashes. I'm not sure, but yeah, we've chosen our GPU, so hopefully it will simulate a little bit faster. So now, if we hit play, hopefully, well, nothing happens. And it's because there's no force pulling these particles down. So we need to add a gravity daemon. So let's do that. Let's go to Daemons, Gravity. There we go. So now we've got a gravity daemon in there, and it's at a default of 981, which is Earth's gravity. So that should work for us now. Let's hit play. And they do fall down. And they're not colliding with our container, unfortunately. So why is that? Oh, I know exactly why that is. If we go to our cell size and offset, you can see that there's some grayed out stuff there. And if we actually, you know, it says collision geometry detail medium, but it's grayed out. And if we actually go to our collision geometry here, this is all grayed out, and it's because it's not linked to the Realflow fluid. If you'd have created this, if I deleted this and then created it now, the fluid would already be linked in there. So I'm just going to drag this in. Also, the scene, does the scene need to be in here? Yeah, okay, so the scene needs to be in here, and I think this fluid needs to be in here. So we should all be good now. Let's give that a go. Okay, there you go, it's simulating nicely now. So we've got our body of water in there. Now, I've only got 5 seconds in here, but I think that's not going to be enough water for us. Look, it's only filling half of this up. So we could actually make our fill object bigger. We could do that, or we could just change the resolution so this is more dense. So let's go back to this view and have a look at this. And let's go to our fluid. Go to our fluid here, and there we've got resolution here. So if we have a look at this now, you can see that this is happening. But if we up our resolution to say 4, something like that, it should mean these particles are more tightly packed together, which probably means actually that we've got less fluid, but a more accurate solve. So just so I can make things run faster for you guys, I think I'm going to put the resolution back down to 2, and I'm actually going to change the size of our fill object. I'm going to drag this up like that. Let's have a look at our fill object. Where is it? Let's turn it back on. There we go. So we don't want it that big. Maybe something like this. Something like that. And then we'll go back to the beginning and press play. There we go. So we've got a lot more fluid in there now. Some of it's probably going to splash over the sides. Okay, so that's a little bit more like it. But the thing is, we don't want anything that spills over the sides to be falling through our floor. There's no collision on the floor there. We don't want it to be falling forever. So I'm going to add a kill box. So anything that spills over the side gets killed. So let's do that. Let's go to Realflow, Daemons, kill volume. There we go. Okay, so our kill volume, what do we want? Fall off, box, yeah, we'll have a box. Weight, scale, fall off. Okay, so we don't want that, we want it fully enveloped. So let's have a look at the side of this. So we can drag that in like this and move it up, and we can do this and come into the side view here and do this. So I'm hoping that anything that falls outside of the bounds of this box now will be killed dead. And as you can see, some stuff splashes over and it's just getting killed. There we go. So that's what we want. That's what we're looking for. So we can hide the kill volume and rewind this to the beginning. And I think we don't want to have to watch this full every time, so maybe we should create an initial state. I'm just going to save this here, and I think, if I'm correct, there should be an initial state somewhere. It's probably in the fluid. Create initial state. Okay, that's good. So let's give ourselves some more time on this. 10 seconds maybe. Rewind to the beginning. We'll play that. We'll let the water hit the bottom, and we'll let it calm down a little bit for a little while, just so it's not moving so much. So that's chugging along nicely. Maybe a little bit more. I mean, that's pretty much there, I think. Yeah, so let's stop it there. We'll create initial state, and then we'll use the initial state as well. And then when we go back to 0, we're at this state already. Perfect. So let's go back to 5 seconds, because that's probably all we're going to need. So now we've got our pool of water. In fact, just so you can see what's going on inside it, let's hide the container as well. So now we've got this body of water. So let's get to the crux of this. Let's get rid of that grid as well. Actually, that's kind of annoying. There we go. Let's get our Vortex Daemon in. Vortex. Okay, right. So, what is this and what does it do? Well, if we dump it in and just press play, not too much is happening there. Oh, we've got some action now. We just let it run for a bit. So you can see what it's doing. It's creating a swirling motion. And as you can see, these particles are getting lighter as the velocity increases of our particles. Okay, so that's a start, I suppose. So let's select our vortex and go to our vortex settings, and let's have a look at what's going on. So, as always, we've got our Realflow scene, and you'll notice that this wasn't in 1.0, and I think it's because you can have multiple scenes within a Cinema 4D file now. And we've got our fluid linked. That gets added automatically. The effect is force and velocity. We've gone over this plenty of times already. They're in all the demons that I've covered, mostly. I prefer force, so I'm going to leave it on that. Right, okay, so let's get to the guts of this then. Let's get to the good stuff. This rot strength here, that's rotational strength. So this is the rotational force around the demon center axis. So obviously it accepts positive values, and it accepts negative values, and this represents clockwise, positive being clockwise and negative being counterclockwise. So let's crank this up to maybe what, 350, and give it a whirl. Okay, we can definitely see we've got some action going on there straight away. Look at that. That's really sucking it in there. We can even have a side view and see what's going on. We can see some particles spilling over the edge there. Okay, so it returned to the start. Let's stop that and just save our scene. So there you go. You can see an example of some positive rotational strength there. Let's give it some negative. Let's go minus 350 and see what that does for us. And there you go. As expected, we start spinning the other way. Lovely. Some nice action there. Okay, so that is basically what the rotational strength does. And then we've got the central strength after this. Okay, so this central strength, the center axis can create an attraction, a positive attraction or a negative attraction. So like the rotational strength, we can have negative values or positive values. So if we... So it's like an attractive force, so maybe it'll keep everything together. So if we put this back up to 350 and have a look at this, we can see things being flung outwards, and that results in stuff going over the edge. In fact, just to get there a little bit quicker, I'm going to put this up to 450 and see if that gets us there any quicker. Yeah, there we go. It's working its magic already. In fact, it's displacing quite a lot of water there. And yeah, already we're seeing stuff spilling over the edge and getting killed by our kill box, which is good. And so let's crank up this central strength value then to maybe 100 centimeters. Let's see if that does anything. Okay. Is it keeping things in a little bit more? Yeah, you can see the distribution's a little bit more even as well. Things are still falling over the edge, so let's crank this up to 200 then and see if that has a... Oh, we can see the velocity of those particles has increased. Let's go back to the beginning. Yeah, okay, so it's kind of pulling them into the center, trying to keep them together a bit more. We're still losing particles over the edge, which is expected, but you can see we're kind of getting this waterfall motion there. In fact, we're getting quite a bit more turbulence as well, which is good. So that's basically what this central strength value does. It tries to attract everything to the center axes. So let's actually try the negative value. Let's go minus 200. So before they were getting flung outwards, and this should actually increase that effect more. Yeah, you can see we've got a lot more particles going over the edge now. So even this is spinning around, those particles are being sort of, you know, dejected. Let's crank it up to 400 and see what happens. Oh yeah, those particles, yeah, it really wants those particles away from the centre of it now. We're really getting those particles sploshing over the side. So, yeah, that's what that does. So let's put this central strength back to 0. Now we know what it's doing. It's basically a repulsive or an attractive force. The attenuation. So we can choose from different types of fall off here. So we've got a linear fall off. We've got a squared and a cubic. So linear is given as this result. Square will probably give us a slightly different result. Okay, that's actually quite a nice effect, squared. Let's try cubic. Now apparently cubic gives you the fastest attenuation according to the help guide. You can see that's very much been subdued now. So maybe we can crank up our rotation strength to something a little more ridiculous. And actually with cubic you're getting a lot more predictable results, maybe not as realistic. Let's try and crank up the central strength and see if we can get something interesting going on there. Okay, so that's something a lot more predictable and a lot more symmetrical as well. That's interesting. Let's crank this up to something a bit more extreme then. Okay. So there we go. Our rotation strength has gone way up. So we're getting something going on in the middle. In fact, we're right down to the bottom now. Okay. Maybe we'll turn the central strength back down to 0. See if it flings out. You can see the fall off. It dies off quite quickly in terms of energy. You know, we've got this mad rush in the middle. And then as we come out here, you know, the rotation dies off. Although it is getting larger as time progresses. So let's stop that. I'm just going to go back to the square actually, just to see what kind of result we get. Again, it's quite subdued for the value that we put in, but it does grow quicker. And I should imagine if we put it back to our linear fall off, this is going to be absolutely ballistic. Yep. And sploosh right over the side there. Yeah. Pretty amazing. Okay, so we can see the different types of attenuation there. I'm going to put this back to 350. I think that's a good result for us to have. Okay, so after that we get bounded. We've covered this in many other demons. And if you click on bounded, here we go. We can see, if we go into our side view, we can see that we've got these 3 interesting boundary lines now. So if I press play now, you can see that nothing's happening, and that's because this thing is bounded. So this checkbox turns this bounding on and off. This boundary actually chooses the size of the bounding. So anything outside of this is now, you know, it's not affected. And for the top and bottom of these, this is what these do. Okay, so we've got the bounding. It says bounding sup here, and I think that is the upper limit of the vortex. So let's just get that back. And this is bounding inf, and that is the lower limit of the vortex. So this one. So I'm just going to put that back. And to demonstrate what these are doing, I'm going to play our animation, and then I'm going to pull this down and just dip the bottom in to our particles. And as you can see, they start swirling around. And you can see there's a fall off associated with these. So this is the lower limit. And you can see that the fall offs. Let's crank this up so we've just got a lot more going on. And so this is the lower limit, and as you can see, as it's been dipped in, you know, it's actually acting on this surface bunch of particles, but it's not doing much else to the particles underneath, and that's because they're not being included. So if I pull this further down, you can see that this middle ring is where it basically represents the strongest part of the vortex. And you can see there's a lot more going on with the particles underneath now as well. So if I drag this under the middle part, now we can see we're getting something going on. There we go. It's really working its magic now. And this upper limit, if I drag it all the way through, like this, you can see that this is turning the particles within, but there's an upper limit. You can kind of see them falling in. And if I put it down even further, even though the particles underneath are being affected, anything outside this upper bounds is not really... They're kind of just sort of falling into the middle, and then getting moved by this middle limit. So if I move this down even further, we should see less going on top. And you see what I mean there? The particles are just kind of falling in. So this is what this bound does. This is the limits of your vortex, which is great because it means you can animate this thing going through your water. There we go. We're getting some action going on now. You can actually animate a vortex going through your fluid. And, you know, there's all kinds of things that you could probably do with that. Very cool. Okay, so that's the bounding, basically. So I'm going to turn that off again. So there is no upper limit or lower limit. Well, it's probably just a fall off from this central point, to be honest. Okay, so And it's not just about the bounding with the upper and lower limit. It's about the bounding of the actual shape itself. So this boundary, if I pull this, don't want to go too far. If I pull this in so it's only 100 centimeters, now the vortex is only concentrated here. And even though particles are getting bunged out the edges, once they're outside this bounding, they are no longer being affected by the vortex itself. It'll just be sort of momentum that's carrying them further, which you can see slowly bleeds off as they encounter a friction with the other particles that they're going into. And obviously you can go the other way. So let's go 350. So now it's bigger, and you can see that it's having a much larger effect. Boom. And again, all these values can be animated. I'm actually in negative values there, so that's interesting. Yeah, so it's almost like, that is interesting, because I wonder, let's try minus 200. No, that's minus 2000. There we go, minus 200. That's a shame. I was half expecting everything outside the bounding to be affected. But why would it be? That's a good point, actually. Although, let me have a look. Yeah, okay, so that is the zone of influence. So it can be backwards. I wonder why they're given us negative values if it's not going to be affected outside. Maybe it's a way of choosing a part that's calm if you've got other vortexes in there. I'll look into that and see if we can do anything with the negative values for the boundary. Okay, so let's click off bounded, and we've got this vortex type now. That's the last thing on our list to look at. So this is the classic type. Okay, so classic creates a homogeneous force field where the fall off obeys the adjusted attenuation. And then the next one on our list, we have complex. Okay, so there's just two. With complex, the forces reach their peak strength at a given distance. So that equals radius from the centre. Okay, so you can see that once we've changed from classic to complex, this radius value is has been unlocked, if you like. So, okay, with complex, the forces reach their peak strength at a given distance. That equals the radius from the centre. This distance is displayed as a dashed circle around the centre. Okay, so I gather it's this. Let's just pull this up. Is it dashed? It's a circle. They lied. Okay, so let's oh, that is strong. Let's put the rotational strength down to 350 again, just to calm it down a bit. Calm it down. Well, it's still pretty mad. So let's adjust this radius then. Let's bring the radius down to, say, 10 centimeters. What does that do? Let's take it back to the beginning. Okay, so is that where the strength is centered then? I mean, it's still pushing, you know, particles out to the edge like nobody's business. But yeah, I think that's where the force reaches its peak at this, you know, distance. So let's drag that down and see what's going on. Yeah, that's its peak strength. Okay then, so if that's the case, if I whack this up to maybe 150, its peak strength will be, you know, all the way out to this edge here, which it appears it is doing. Yeah, you can see the rotor, yeah. Look at this, you can see the velocity of the particles is the strongest at the edge of this circle. So that gives you some really good control about, you know, how big your vortex you want it to be, and you know what's going on with it and all that kind of thing. Let's crank this up to something a little bit more mental. There we go, 200. So yeah, we'll see the velocity around this stage now, and we'll also see our particles flying out our container. But we're getting some really nice, you know, fluidic results there. That's beautiful. Okay, so the other setting, let's turn this back to classic. There's our classic shape. There's our, I wonder if this radius, if I, no, not that. If I reset this to default, it shouldn't have an effect, I don't think, if we've got a classic shape. No, I don't think so. So I'm going to put this down to 200. I'm going to make the central stem 100, just to give us something a little bit more uniform. Okay, yeah, it's churning away now. Okay, so the only thing we've really got to consider now is the fall off tab, and this is obviously you know, self-explanatory. At the moment it's set to infinite, so if we set this to box, I think it's safe to say that anything outside this yellow section of the container is not affected by the vortex, and you can see the energy falls off very, very quickly. And this red box is where the... So, okay, let's pull this out. Let's actually pull this out, shall we? There we go. So I think this red box here is where the force is the strongest. So if I suck it right down there, and it's in between the outer bounds of this red box and the inner bounds of this yellow box, this is the fall off. So this is maximum energy, and outside this box it slowly starts to fall off until it reaches the edge of the this yellow box, and then outside of the yellow box, 0 influence. So let's just make this a little bit bigger, and then we can see the fall off between the red and the yellow box. Yeah, and you can see outside the yellow box, they've got a little bit of momentum. Let's crank up the actual speed of the vortex again, just so we can get some results quicker. Double it. Okay, there we go. So yeah, you can see it's slowly falling off as it gets to the edge of the yellow box, and then outside dies off real quick. So we've got the choice here of box, capsules, and obviously I've skewed that shape slightly with affecting the size. We've got cones. Now this can be incredibly helpful, because we can shape and sculpt our forces and our effects, so it gives us the opportunity to really sort of like hone in on the kind of effects we want. Oh, this is a linear effect, is it? I wonder if I can rotate this on its side. Oh, that's interesting. That is interesting. So it appears anything this side, it's got the vortex going on, and then it bleeds off this side. So that's that is interesting. And what else have we got? We've got none. No fall off whatsoever. Source. Sample distance. I'm not sure what that does. Oh, we can. Okay, you can use a you can use a spline as a fall off function, so you can actually dictate the shape of the fall off. That's really good. So we can use another object as a source. So I could let me create a sphere, and we'll drag this bad boy up. There we go. Oh, it's casting shadows on the particles. That's nice. And I'm going to hide the sphere, but I'm going to drag it into our source. So where's the vortex? Sphere, source link. Nope, it doesn't want to. I wonder if it has to be a editable object. Let's have a look. So it's set to box at the moment. Source. Yes, it has to be editable. Okay, that's different. So let's get rid of that. I think it didn't like whatever it is that I just did, so that's interesting. Oh, it really didn't like what I just did. I might have to reboot this scene. Okay, we're back in business. It obviously didn't like me doing whatever it was that I was doing while it was playing, so note to self. Yeah, don't do that. Sphere, we've got a sphere fall off. And again, we can animate that, we can resize it, you know, you can do whatever you like. And we've got a torus. Okay, so that's interesting. That's something a little bit more complex. That's nice. So can we, yeah, we can change the size of that. We can stretch it out this way. Okay. So there we go, guys. I mean, I think that pretty much covers the Vortex Daemon in all its glory. So as always, check out the Digital Meat website, digitalmeat.uk. There'll be links in the description for the website, along with my social media. That's Facebook, Google Plus and Twitter. So come and say hi there as well. Also, don't forget to check out C4Dcafe.com. I've got a club there, so you can join the club, you can take part in the forums and all that kind of stuff. And if you'd like to get your hands on some extra content, check out my Patreon. I'm doing some Patreon only content over there for only $1 a month. So I'll put a link to that in the description and on the outro of this video. Okay guys, I'll see you next time. Hope that helped. Bye.